We have a majority government, so that brings some stability and surety. There are a number of expectations. There's the in-out EU referendum, there's reform of the House of Lords, there's reform of the boundaries, there's the jobs bill with regard to limiting benefits for 18 to 21-year-olds. But one area that I think we should begin to focus on immediately is housing policy, and that's incredibly important. We saw in the run-up to the general election that all parties focused on housing policy, and I think the good news since the general election is that we have the same housing minister in place as we had before the general election, maybe for one of the first times continuity in that post. Well, what I would like to see is government and parliament working together on housing policy, because that's actually crucial to have a coalition of thinking. At the moment, I think the most controversial aspect of the government's manifesto commitment is the right to buy extension for housing association tenants. Now, the reason that's incredibly controversial is that housing associations are independent, not-for-profit organisations, and most of them are charities. So this stock is not owned by the government. And so, in a way, some people will argue that they are basically nationalising sort of private stock, and that is pretty unacceptable for many commentators. What does that mean? It means that housing associations potentially will find it much more difficult to borrow on the markets. At the moment, they get less than 20% subsidy from government through the Homes and Communities agencies, so most of the funding now comes from the bond markets. If you begin to bring uncertainty into that market, then the housing associations are going to find it very difficult to borrow to build, and that's what we need to do. We need to see build. One of the other areas of concern is that the government seems to be focusing on build for ownership, whereas in fact the real crisis is with affordable and social housing. So we need to get the right mix of policy that affects all those people needing new homes, be they homeowners, be they private renters, or be they people who need social housing. Well, I think the chance of success for right to buy being extended to housing associations is fraught with all sorts of difficulties. Legal wranglings, the possibility of £62 billion worth of borrowing that the housing associations have already undertaken being put on the public sector books as a consequence. That would be an appalling state of affairs for a government that says it can manage the economy. The other challenges, of course, are making sure that there's not too much happening, too much going on that clouds delivery and actually sort of impedes delivery. So, for example, we've still got a commitment to garden cities. Ebbsfleet hasn't progressed very far, very fast. We've got the idea of brownfield banking. Is that going to happen? How do you marry a new Secretary of State's commitments to more localism with the need to set frameworks for building on brownfield sites? These are some of the sort of the key challenges. As I said, you know, if we only focus on help to buy for homeowners, then we're losing out on the right mix. Also, I think that the idea of 200,000 new homes for under 40s with a 20% discount will only fuel the property boom, and therefore in places like London people will still be out of reach of buying sort of their own properties. So there needs to be a sensible balance, and I don't think we've got there yet.